Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Paul Everett, JetBrains Developer Advocate, and I'll be your host. Was just saying to Chau, I woke up this morning. I've done a lot of these webinars. I woke up this morning excited about this one. Our last webinar was a WebStorm Power Users Manual. Guess what? This one is too, but it's the Angular edition. And for this, we're joined with it by an Angular expert, Chau Tran, senior engineer with our friends at Narwhal, creator of AutoMapper for TypeScript, Angular Google developer expert, core member of Nest.js, which got my little attention as a weekend project a couple of weekends ago, and founder of Angular Vietnam. Welcome, Chau.
Thank you, Paul. Hi, everyone.
We've got a good number of people in the channel already. Chau, I remember meeting Jeff Cross at an NG Conf, what felt like 100 years ago. Narwhal is like this innovation factory machine. Every day there's something coming out that I stop what I'm doing and go read about. What's it like to work there?
It's very fun and it is a very humble experience. Like before joining Narwhal, I was like, I'm a good developer. I think I'm a good developer, but then joining Narwhal, not so much.
I joke that I get paid to be an expert on our tools. And every day I wake up and I'm like, I know 2% of the tool and it's going to change 1% during the day. And I think some of the stuff that you're doing at Narwhal is kind of similar, just some really changing the developer experience in important ways. But tell me about starting Angular Vietnam and then what's next on your kind of outreach interests.
Yep. So Angular Vietnam was one of the first programming group that I joined when I first started learning about Angular. And at the time, I was just a member. I joined and I asked questions. I share what I learned about questions that I asked. And then the admin at the time reached out and asked me, hey, do you want to become an admin with me? Like, yes. Right. And then after that, as an admin, when I share knowledge about Angular, I need to fact check myself. So that's how I learn as well. At the same time, sharing and then learning at the same time. And it has been 4 years now, and we've grown to 20,000 members.
Can you imagine going back 4 years ago to the past you and saying, here's what it's going to turn into?
Yeah, absolutely. It's insane.
That kind of open source journey is a reminder. Anybody can jump in, do something that matters to you and matters in general, and it will lead to wonderful destinations. So much fascinating stuff going on for work, for life, including this webinar. So let's proceed.
Yep.
All right. We'll do some housekeeping first. We'd like to make this webinar as live and conversational as possible. As you can see, we're having a good conversation already. So should you have any questions or problems during the webinar, please feel free to ask them at any time during the presentation. Don't wait till the end. Using the chat in YouTube, and somehow I woke up in 2022 and I'm doing Twitch. So we are in both YouTube and Twitch, and we can answer things on either side. Chau, you'll pause at certain times during the webinar when you reach kind of segments and ask if there are any questions, right?
Yep.
All right, cool. And so we'll queue them up. We'll answer some of them if it's about our side on WebStorm. Or if it's about Angular, we'll send them over to Chau. Don't wait till the end of the presentation. Ask the questions as soon as you have them. Usually the most common question is this webinar being recorded? It is my standard joke. I've been doing this for 6 years. I always say that 2 minutes from now, someone's going to ask if this is being recorded. I believe we've already had that question. Yes, it's going to be recorded. It's YouTube. It's recorded. It'll be available immediately. But we will also post this on our Twitter and our YouTube, where you can get more information about this event and any other events. I'm going to use host privilege. And Chau did give me the green light saying it was okay for me to do this. We're looking for someone to join my team as a developer advocate for web and JavaScript stuff at JetBrains. Come and join us. It's the best job ever. If you're interested, take a look at this URL, hit us up on Twitter, or email me, paul.everett@jetbrains.com. I'm kind of easy to find. All right, now that that's all set, we're ready to begin. Chau, show us some Angular power tips in WebStorm.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in. And thank you, Paul, for the introduction. So I have been a WebStorm user for about 4 years now, and I've been a fan. Cannot go back to anything else. As Paul mentioned, we're going to have several segments, and I'm going to stop at the end of each segment and ask if anybody has questions. So first, we're going to take a look into like setting up WebStorm. This is probably the most common questions that I have every time I stream or I show video that I use WebStorm. Hey, Chau, how did you set up your WebStorm? So we're going to go through that. Next would be, I guess, the main dish for this webinar is tips and tricks for Angular. And then last but not least, we're going to go through tips and tricks for like generic WebStorm users, which can still be helpful for Angular users as well. And as Paul already mentioned, again, please ask questions. There are stuff that I might not know that your questions might allow me to go research. And there's stuff that part of my workflow that I cannot recall. And your question can remind me to show you. So please, please, please ask questions. All right. The first thing is how I set up my WebStorm. So when I set up my machine and I set up WebStorm, the first thing that I'm doing is I'm going to set up additional keymaps. And these are the 4 things that I'm going to set up. I'm going to open up the settings real quick here. I'm going to show the key map. And if you search for clone, caret, above and below, these 2 come like non-set by default. And it is so useful to work with. And this is what it is. So if we do this. So that is cloning the caret above and below, so you can have multi-cursors editing. Next is, again, one of my favorite is select file in project view. So let's say you're on this file, right? You're on this file, and you want to know what the parent directory, where this file is inside of your project. You can either click here, select open file, or you can set a key map for select file in project view. So it is select file in project view here. So you go to key map and search for select file in project view and give it a key map. And every time you have a file, you open a file and you can just hit that key map. It will bring up the project view, focus on the project view, and then you can start navigating the neighbor files of this file. And this is very helpful when you use Angular with like a separate template and separate CSS file. Let's say you're working on the HTML, right? And then you want to know, hey, I want to go to the component.ts now. You just hit that, it will open up and focus on the project view, and you can start using your arrow key to go to the neighboring files. All right. Next is open recent. I don't know about you, but I work on a lot of projects, and mainly side projects or open source projects. And WebStorm has open recent, but it's not mapped to any key. So if you, like me, you might want to set up open recent project with key map, so that when you're inside of the project and your boss say, hey, can you look at this real quick for me? And you can just hit the key map and say open recent, and then you can jump to that project. So that open recent. Last but not least is close project. Again, you want open and you also want close project. And set a key map for it so you can close the project easily. And again, anything else, I remap my terminal. Terminal comes in like a function key by default, and it's a little bit far from the home row on your keyboard. So if you like me, you like to stay on the keyboard, You might want to remap that to something else that you can hit easier. I remap it to Command T or Control T on Windows to open up my terminal. Right, so that's additional keymaps. Next, we have mouse wheel and font size. If you look for mouse wheel under settings, there's a change font size with command mouse wheel. So what it does is when you do like presentation or when you do a video, when you show the code, you can quickly zoom the code in to show the important part with the command key and the mouse wheel. And this will change the font size. And then you can reset the font size to go back. So that's a mouse wheel and font size. Next, this is the second most common question, memory settings. For some reason, Paul, you might know, I don't know. For some reason, WebStorm comes out of the box with only 500 megabytes for memory heap. And that might be a little bit too low for your project. And we know like front-end projects, JavaScript, TypeScript projects become a little bit more intensive these days. So one thing that you can help WebStorm is to increase the memory allowance that WebStorm can use. You can hit Command A to open up the actions, which is what I've been doing. Again, that's part of my workflow. So I do it without thinking. So I'm sorry. So you can open up Command Shift A to open up the actions tab, and you can type in memory, and there's a change memory settings. Here you can change the memory to whatever value that you like. I'm on a pretty beefy machine, so I give WebStorm 8 GB. Usually 4 GB should be enough. And there you go. Change this one and restart. You will see a boost in performance because now WebStorm has more room to do its things. In addition to that, you might want to turn on show memory indicator. If you turn this on, then at the bottom right corner of WebStorm, there will be that like memory indicator, how much you're using, how much has been allocated by WebStorm. And then this is a little trick. There's no tooltip or anything like that. But if you click on that, it actually runs garbage collected manually. So if you see WebStorm starting to slow down, you can click on this memory indicator and it will run the garbage collection. So that's a show memory indicator. Next, we're going to plugins. WebStorm comes with a lot of plugins pre-installed and pre-enabled. So you can go to plugins and go to install and disable the plugins that you don't use. And it will boost up the time that WebStorm starts. And it just you can just go through this and like uncheck the one that you don't use. And while we're on the plugin, there's 2 plugins that I would recommend installing. One is AceJump. I'm going to show it in a little bit. And another one is string manipulation. So these 2 are the only 2 plugins that I install beside my themes. These 2. So AceJump and string manipulation. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about Prettier. Prettier has become like a standard when you work on like a JavaScript, TypeScript projects. And with WebStorm, we have Prettier plugin comes bundled and enabled. However, this does not come with an installation of Prettier. So like by default, you're not going to have like Prettier. And then what WebStorm, I guess, recommends is you will install Prettier as a dev dependencies in your project so that everybody who works on the same project can use the same Prettier version as well as the same Prettier settings so that you don't run into conflicts. If the plugin comes with an installation of Prettier, then people might be on different version of Prettier and might be on different plugin configurations. So that's Prettier. And while Prettier is running, we can open up again the Prettier settings for JavaScript. And after you install it, you will be able to select the installation for the Prettier package here. And then I would click on save so that I will run Prettier on save. And then click on all actions on save and also tick optimize imports. So if you have Prettier, you check optimize imports and run Prettier for actions on save. This means that whenever you save, WebStorm's gonna organize your imports, remove unused import, reorder the imports, and then run Prettier. You might not want to do reformat code. Reformat code has its own code style, which might be in conflict with Prettier. Well, then see if I can install it. That's fine. We don't need it. But yeah, so that's Prettier and WebStorm. Next, appearances. I use light theme and dark theme based on the time of the day. So I sync the themes with my operating system. So like right now I'm using light theme, but then when it's 6 p.m., it turns to dark theme. You can do the same, or you can just pick light or dark. Next, we will have custom font. So custom font is the font of everything but the editor. So what you see right here, the preferences windows, the project view, all of that will be affected by this custom font. So if you want to change that and increase the font size if you like. So that's the custom font. Next, we're going to go to editor. Editor, font. Oops, not general. Font. This is the font of the editor. So this is where you're going to write code. So you can change the font. You don't want to go to color scheme font and change the font here because there's a couple with the scheme. If you change this color scheme, then you have to reset your font. I would recommend changing the font here inside of editor font. And then last but not least, we have editor tabs. There's a mark modified. You want to have this. If you don't have this, then you don't know, or it's less apparent what file has been changed and what file is changed, but it has not been saved. So that's mark modify. And then we have TypeScript imports. And then if you look for TypeScript under code style, you go to imports, and that this line, do not import exactly from. And if you open it up, now you can put in the path of, all the paths that you don't want WebStorm to auto import from. And if you use Angular material, you know that you might want to import from material/button, material/table, and never import from material itself for tree checking purposes. So WebStorm has this functionality to help you with that. All right, so that's the end of setting up WebStorm. I know you go kind of fast, but any questions?
Oh my goodness, do we have questions? Not just questions, but also other tips as well. So let's go through these fast because we have so many of them to go through. Comment from me. Some people are already like, what's the keyboard shortcut? The one that matters is find action. It's what you were using to get to all of these.
Yeah.
Life is too short to memorize 400 shortcuts. Just memorize one for find action, and then use speed typing to type parts of the word to get to the one that you want. A little known fact, you can actually change some of the preferences directly within find action. I turn off my tabs without having to go to preferences. Okay, on to some questions. A couple of questions about, will your tips work in IntelliJ IDEA and PHP Storm when they're doing web stuff, Angular stuff?
Yes.
So we kind of answered that a little bit as well. If you have IntelliJ Ultimate, you have access to the plugins, PHP Storm bundles, WebStorm, so you're good on that. Here's one I'm going to give you a chance to say no comment. How to properly set up WebStorm for Angular and NativeScript. Have you ever done NativeScript?
I have, but not much recently. So I don't know that answer.
Okay. But is it achievable?
It is achievable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are the keyboard shortcuts all Windows based? Now you're presenting on which platform?
I'm on Mac right now.
Okay.
So
You're getting the Mac ones, and that's also another tip. When you do find
actions.
it will show you the shortcut if there is one. There's this plugin that we all use for our presentations called Presentation Assistant that whenever you invoke an action, it will pop up something at the bottom and show you the name of the action you did and then the shortcuts on all the platforms for it. So if you're someone out there trying to explain to other people, you're on Windows, they're on Mac, that's a good opportunity. Someone asked, of course, you had to know this was coming. What theme is that? They love it.
This is Craftbox light, and for dark theme I use Craftbox dark. So this is dark, and this is light.
All right. Someone mentioned, Justin Fan mentioned about using search everywhere shift.
Yep.
If you don't want to learn the difference between find by symbol, find by action, just do search everywhere. Near the beginning, Lucy Barber is asking you to go back to, I think, your second tip on the mouse wheel font size.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you mean like this in the settings?
Yeah, could you go back to it? Yeah.
Yep. So if you look for mouse wheel, in the general, it will highlight that. And this is one of the cooler things of WebStorm is that it will highlight what you search for.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Some tips that have come in. Actually, no, sorry. One more question. How does Prettier work together with ESLint?
Well, that's on the implementation side of things for per project.
Yep.
It's not really related to like how WebStorm works. So you have to set up like plugin and stuff like that yourself.
Sure. But that's the way I actually use Prettier is via ESLint. And then I set up ESLint to run on save and reformat. Now that 2 releases ago, we added really configurable support for actions to run on save. Tomasz from the WebStorm team mentioned he's added select file in project view to the editor tab context menu, and he says it's really neat. So if you're like in an editor on the tab and you do a right click, you can jump to the file. Someone else mentioned the key map for quick definition is also very good so that you can preview files also in project view without having to interrupt your flow. And let's see, RM said for navigating between files, he recommends navigate to related symbol. I will admit that's the way I work too. I don't think about files. I think about symbols. And I navigate to something. I turn off tabs and I navigate to something by searching for the class name or something like that. All right. Okay. The native script question that just came in about IntelliSense not working correctly, we'll have the WebStorm team handle that. Okay. Back over to you. These are some really good points.
Is this a place where I can I suggest as well?
Yeah, go ahead. All you.
Okay, so on actions on saves, like these right here, it's just all 5 types, but I wish we could have like a club to prevent or exclude what file not to run this. So in some file where we have like set up test to set up like the test before just run or Jasmine runs, some file needs to be at the top, or some import may need to be at the top. But then if I turn on optimize imports, it goes to the end, or it goes out of order, and then my test breaks.
Very interesting. The WebStorm team was talking last week about changes to make to give you more import preferences. PyCharm has some import preferences you can set on how things are grouped. So we will follow up with you. Hey, WebStorm team, make sure we follow up with Chau about this, whether it's change to actions on save or whether it's a change to better settings for optimized imports. By the way, I'll mention your very first tip is the one multi-caret. I know I need to know it. And for years and years, I've managed to avoid learning it, but I really need to get that to be part of my natural process. Got anything else, or you want to go on to your next tips?
I'm going to go next to tips and tricks of Angular. All right. So, yep, 3A. So, WebStorm love Angular. So, the first tips and tricks, I guess tip is that the Angular CLI context menu is awesome. I'm inside of the project right now. But if you have like a welcome screen of WebStorm, or like the first time you open it, you have the ability to create a new project using the Angular CLI. So if I do find action as a new project, there will be Angular CLI available for you to create your new Angular CLI project. But the Angular CLI context menu is like when you focus on the project view, and then let's say you want to generate a new component or you want to generate a new module. Let's go with the component, and you do the context menu. On my computer, on Mac is Control Enter, is to say the new context menu. There will be Angular dependency and Angular schematic. The Angular dependency is for ng add. So if you want to add like Angular material, you can go with Angular dependency and search for Angular material. And then there's Angular schematic. Is now I want to generate a new component. I hit Angular schematic, and then I search for component. And then I would just type in my component name to say counter, right? And then you can hit control space. It will bring up the list of all the actions. All the options that the schematic, the component schematic, accept. So for this one, I want to have, I guess, let's do standalone, flat, and we just go with that. Now it will generate this component. And it would do, and this is not magic. This is not like WebStorm doing things. It's actually based on the Angular CLI that you have installed on your project, and it will grab the default that you set up in the Angular JSON file. If you have it set up like a default schematics, and it would just read from that and would do that for you. So this is not magic. It's just, hey, it has a context menu that you can use and utilize the Angular CLI you have installed at your disposal. All right, so that's the Angular CLI context menu. So this is Paul. I like navigating by file because sometimes you don't have any symbol in these markdown files. All right, next is extract component. All right, so when you work on like a component-based framework, and Angular is one, you want to sometimes, hey, my component is getting a little bit too big. I want to extract this part of the template out into a component. Let's find one. Actually, let's just remove everything. Let's have a button here and say increment, something like that. Okay. Then have decrement, and then I will have count. All right. So this is the part of the template, and I want to extract this out into a component. I'm going to delete this module real quick, this component real quick, and then I will do is I will highlight the portion of the template I want to extract out, and then hit Control T, or it's refactor this. This is one of the best key map ever. Control T, and that's extract component. And you can give it a name, and it will extract. Oops, let's expect output from the Angular CLI. And there we go. It's a component. I don't know what that error is. So, oh, and it's not. Let's redo it. Let's redo it. Yep, that's why. So now let's redo it. Refactor this, extract component, counter. Huh. I'm not sure what happened with my WebStorm setup there, but let's do this. This is the expected output, is that it will bring the template, the portion of the template out to the component, and it will replace that with the selector of the component. Demo failed. I'm sorry.
So it generated the counter component, but it didn't replace the usage.
Yeah.
Okay, that's something we'll take a look at. By the way, one of the coolest things I like about extract component is if you change your mind, you undo, and it reverts everything back the way it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That. Actually, I think it run into some error.
Yeah.
So I guess it's not doing that.
We'll go and recreate it on our side and see if it's a problem.
Yep. And anyway, and by the way, that extract component uses the same schematic options that the generate component or the component schematic is using for your Angular CLI. So whatever options that you have default for your component schematic, it will use that. Yep.
That's interesting.
So like if you set up an inline style, inline template by default, it would use that and not generate like HTML and CSS.
Okay, we just saw we have a bug in NG14. That's what we ran into.
Yep, maybe it's related to Angular 14 and standalone component and stuff. All right, next is Refactor. This is my favorite one. Refactor. When you work on a project, like a big project, and you do some big refactor, you're not just like moving TypeScript files around. You're not just moving files around. You might change your selector to something else. Like let's say you have the scope right here as app, but then maybe you have another app, you want to call it something else, like second app or something like that. WebStorm can help you refactor the selector. So now let's go here. Okay, there might be a bug that might not work, but let's see. Here I'm rendering app counter, but now I'm gonna go to the selector and I say Control T again to refactor this, and I say rename to second app counter. And yes, it worked. So now here it is. So WebStorm takes care of that for you. You don't have to do anything else. Just, I want to change the selector. Just do that. And you can hit Command B, or I don't know, go to definition. Yeah, component decoration or component template it would take you to that class component. And the same thing will apply to if you highlight over the template, we'll jump to that template, and we'll jump to the CSS file if you highlight the CSS path. All right, so that refactor for selector, you can also do the same thing for class name. All right, let's give this a class of count. All right, and then inside of my CSS, I'm going to use count. And WebStorm know that you have the class count from the HTML, and you can give it like a color of red. And now you say, I don't want to count class name is too much. I want to say text danger or something like that. So I'm going to go to rename this and say text danger. And then the CSS get reflected as well. So changing selector, changing class name, basically the authoring experience on with WebStorm and Angular on the template, on the style files, everything is extremely, extremely nice.
Yeah, and just to add to that, if I can, those magical strings, because we understand the framework, we turn them into symbols. And some of the tips that you mentioned before then become available. You can refactor them to rename them. You can navigate to them, find usages. You can search for them, all that kind of stuff. Whether it's in CSS or JavaScript or HTML/template.
Yep. And of course, right now, I say I want to, from my CSS, I want to know what elements is using this class. I just hit Command B or go to, I guess, implementation and declaration. And it will show me that I'm using text danger here. And if I duplicate this, and it will show both, and you can jump to it. So very cool. Next, we have inputs, outputs. Again, if we have an input, and we say, hey, input, in the core, say name, that, and we'll render name here. Okay. And then I say, hey, name, give me the title. Right now, you don't want to the name anymore. You can just rename the name, and you can do it from here. You can rename from here, or you can rename from the component class. I will rename from template, and I say rename, and say this is title instead, and this will reflect, and this will also be reflected on the template. So as process, it turns into symbol. So everywhere using this symbol get refactored. And the same with outputs. We can have output. Event meter. Let's just do that. And then on the template, there's button click. And by the way, this is a less known, but if you have like a custom output on your component, and then you hit open parentheses and then hit control space, it will show up that custom, like those custom event emitters on top, and it will bold. So that's my button click, and I can do something here, just say title equals that. Right? And of course, I can rename this to something else, and it will be reflected everywhere. I did not put this in my list of things, but this is something that WebStorm also do. All right, let's say that I have a div, and on this div I have a template variable. I call this div element. All right, and I save that, and now I want to view child this div element, and I go to my component. I say view child. I need to import it. Yep. And now as soon as I hit the empty string and I do control space instead of the empty string, WebStorm knows that you have this div element as template variable on the template. So you don't have to remember. I mean, you still have to, but WebStorm helps you. So that's the view child. The content child also the same. You can have that. But that is refactored. Next, we have auto import and auto declare. This is the reason why I use WebStorm, guys. This is awesome. All right. So what is auto import? If you use WebStorm, I'm going to take it. I'm going to do this real quick. Actually, let's not. Okay, we have it. Let's say that I want to have I want to use reactive forms or like just forms on my counter component, and I have a count, and I set this to 0. Right, and in my template, I want to have like an input, and I want to bind to that count variable with an ng model, and I do ng model, and you see it shows up, and as soon as I hit it, I can assign to yeah, I think let's go back. Okay, you see that it will gives that this ng model a red wiggly light, and it says that, hey, ng model is not provided by any applicable directives. If you run this, the Chrome console is going to give you cannot bind to ng model because it's not like a node element. And WebStorm can help you import this ng model directive. You do Alt Enter, or I think it's quick action. Right, Alt Enter, and then you can do import forms module. And voila, now you have the ng model available for you to use. And where does this import? Because you say you declared cloud component instead of app module, WebStorm knows to import the forms module inside of this app module so that it is made available to the cloud component. If the cloud component has its own module or some other module, WebStorm will know to add the forms module inside of that module that declare the Chau component instead of the app module. Right? And vice versa, we can import module. We can also auto declare component. Let's say now I take out the Chau component from the declaration of the app module. Right now, my app component cannot use the counter anymore, but WebStorm knows, hey, you're not. I don't know about this. I don't have the context of the second app counter. Let me help you. And then you do Alt Enter again, and say declare counter component in app module, and it will do that for you. So WebStorm, like TypeScript, gives you information. WebStorm gives you that information even you get to the Chrome console and you hit with the cannot buy error. All right, so that auto import and auto declare, it works with pipe, directive, component, whatever you need to import something else into your component to make that directive pipes component available to the component that you're working on. And auto declare is the same thing. And last but not least, is debug template. This is a little bit weird. And I don't know if this is a bug or what, but if you use the separate HTML file, you can see that you sometimes, like right here, you can hit a breakpoint. Like this one you cannot put a breakpoint here, but apparently you can put a breakpoint on where you have bindings. Today I learned, to be honest with you, Paul. Today I learned.
Well, I think that other one is just static. There's nothing happening there to stop on from a template perspective.
There is. I'm going to show you. So now this, you can see that I cannot stop here on the button decrement. But if I turn this into a inline template, and I go here in my component, and I do template, save that. Now I can put a breakpoint right here.
I take it back. Okay, that's on us.
If we do NT-serve real quick here, I should have had this running, but this should be fast. Now, by default, if you have an Angular CLI project and you open with WebStorm is going to give you a couple of run configuration, and one of them is Angular application with this like browser icon. And with that, you can actually debug the running NT-serve. Yeah. And I have it over here. Well, let me bring it over. There we go. So I have it over here, and you can see that it stopped. And if we go to my WebStorm, it actually stopped right here on the button. And if I step into far enough, I will go to the element start, which is the instruction that Angular compilers compile to render this button. You can see that's right there. So inline template, you can use WebStorm to debug everything happening in your template. Bindings, whatever, like update, chain detection. It's so good. That's why I stick with inline template myself. But today I learned that you can actually put breakpoint on the binding itself. Right? But I think you should be able to put this on here as well. But yeah, so that's the final tips and tricks for Angular that I can recall. Any questions?
We have a number. First one is, do you use any of the Angular live templates that we bundle? Do you ever make any of your own?
I don't. I don't use the live template. There are two reasons. One is I consider it is an extra things to remember, especially if you work with Angular. You already have the Angular CLI. So I'd rather remember the Angular CLI syntax. so that I can work anywhere, not just WebStorm. And also, I'm a kind of fast typer, so I tend to type out my component.
And you've learned to let autocomplete do the work for you.
Yeah.
And in fact, that can be faster when the template you want to generate has these special strings in it.
Absolutely.
Can you do shift real quick? Yeah, this is search everywhere. Someone asked what was the key binding for that. Shift and Alt Enter are the entry points to the IDE magic. Sometimes I think we should rename the product Alt Enter. Okay, there's next question. Maybe you've heard of this tool. It's called NX.
Yeah.
So can you recommend using NX combined with WebStorm?
Absolutely. Even though we do not like at Novel, we do have NX console, which is a VS Code extension, and we don't have enough manpower to work on a WebStorm plugin. We do consider it. A lot of people ask for it. We just don't have enough manpower to do it. However, if you look for NX, there are two. And I personally use the NX console IDE. Because this one came out after this one, and because I'm so used to the NX console IDE already, so I find it hard for me to switch. And with the NX console IDE, you have the same experience with the Angular CLI. It gives you the context menu with the NX generate, and I guess more, but I mainly use NX generate with the NX console.
Okay, speeding up because we have 15 more minutes. Jason Warner said, so excited to see both WebStorm and Chau. So that's cool. Let's see. Jason also commented that he uses NX and WebStorm together and it works awesomely. He said there's also a plugin that works with the NX generators. Maybe that's what you just showed. Rustum made a point at 11:34. You scroll down to it. You can also rename the TypeScript class name of a component, and WebStorm will rename all files to dash style names.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the places we got a couple of questions. Why would I want this versus a smart editor? Why would I want like a full IDE experience? Because the IDE goes a lot further in doing work for you. You showed it in your auto imports, the couple of things that you really liked. You showed it in that magic string just before on one of the lifecycle methods. And that's kind of the point is WebStorm goes a good bit further in the total workflow to accomplish a task. As well as stitching everything together in a single UI. Let's see. And then here's one. RM commented we could benefit from a code intention for automatic creation of view child from within HTML. How do you feel about that?
Ooh, yes. That sounds nice.
We had another comment. It was groundbreaking for him that you could easily start to debug an Angular app by Control-Shift-Click on localhost in the console. I didn't know that.
Me neither.
Daggum. Wow. Next webinar guest. All right. Let me go through and see if we've got any more that are queued up for me. No. So can you go through another 10 minutes of tips?
Yep, I will go through these quick. Running out of time.
Right.
I'm gonna close these tabs real quick. All right, so we kind of end the WebStorm and Angular. Those are the specific to Angular. So now we go to like WebStorm and developers, and the authoring experience is so nice. So first of all, our HTML tag. What does this mean? Is that if you change something here, the accompanying tag will change as well. All right, so that's very quick, and I kind of like that, especially when you have like two tags that are kind of out of screen. Out of screen. then it's nice. Next is simplifying. This is when I first use WebStorm, this makes me a better developer. All right, so what is simplifying? Let's say that I have a Boolean, say show equal false, I'm here, and it's a test, it's a function. And this function, let's say, X something, say, hey, if this is not show, return true, and then return false. I see this everywhere. And like people code. And guess what? Like WebStorm has like a wiggly light under the if statement. It say if statement can be simplified. Oh, okay. How? You do Alt Enter, simplify. It would just say, hey, you can just return this instead of do the if else. So that's the simplifying. And this is the one example that I can remember off the top of my head, but there's like ternary, like function and stuff like that. Regex. Oh my goodness. Regex, all of those. If WebStorm can simplify those for you, it will. Oh, it will ask you. It will not do automatically, but it will ask you, do you want to simplify it? Most of the time you should. Extractions. Let's see if I have enough time to go through this. Let's say that you have a, I guess, observable, something. We'll call it this one. And this is going to be an observable of, hey, say, hey, to do just name, string, age, number. All right, and something like that. I'm going to get this one, that. So now you have this kind of like inline type that you know at the time you write this observable that you need. But then later on, you need this somewhere else as well. So you can just do that. I'm going to do like combo tips and trick. So you can see that if I'm inside of this like curly brace, I do option up twice, it would select that inside of my brace. And this is called expand. Right there.
Oh, this is great.
So if I select that and I do Control T, refactor this, extract interface, say some interface. And then there's my interface. Now let's say that now I want to use this interface in some other place. Okay, highlight the interface, do a move, some interface. It will move to that. It will also export it, and it will import it, and we'll use some interface that you just moved. Well, that's the extraction, and there's so much more that you can do with it. Again, I just don't have time. Just quickly do this. So let's say you have some interface variable that has some interface. You can actually implement members inside of this. Will give you that to auto complete your interface. Tips and trick there. Structure. Structure is I'm going to show this project which has more code, and this is like a service, an injectable inside of Angular, and it has quite a bit of methods, variables, interfaces, and stuff like that inside of this file. And you can view this file at a higher level with a structure view. So that is Command 7, or you do structure, and that will give you everything you have inside this file, every symbols that you have inside this file, and you can jump to it. You can actually search for it as well. So I have get tags, and we search for it. And yep, this is structure view. I use this with HTML. You can use this with HTML and like CSS as well. You have HTML big file, CSS big file. Structure is going to give you a better view at your file, so you can navigate easier. CSS CDN. I don't know if okay, let's do it quickly. Sometimes that you're going to have like Bootstrap. You do like a demo, something like that. You have Bootstrap from CDN. I think I have it here. All right, and let's say, and then you remember, hey, Bootstrap has like a button primary, all that stuff. It's not autocomplete for you, right? But now WebStorm's gonna like highlight that link. You can do download library, right? And successfully download a CDN, and now you will have autocomplete of Bootstrap.
That is so good. Thank you for showing that. Life's too short to type class names.
Yep. Yep. So that's for CDN, CSS CDN, any type of CSS CDN that you can do that.
It also applies to JavaScript as well. It'll warn you that,
yep.
hey, this is a library, you want to download it so we can index it.
Expand is what I just show. Is that you do this? You can select, and you can do that with everything that you can expand. Like right here, you can expand everything. And say sometimes you have a bunch of text inside of here, and you can just expand that, and you can just move it around. So that expand. RG, I don't remember RG, but guess what? The key map view of WebStorm has a little dandy handy icon here. It's 5 actions by shortcut. So you don't remember the name of the action, but you remember the key map. You can hit here and hit Alt G. Oh, Shift G. Sorry, Alt Shift G. It is add carrots to end of selected lines. This is the new key map, the new action in some recent versions of WebStorm. I think like 2 major versions ago, I guess. And this kind of removed the need to remember the caret, clone caret, because now you can select all of this. You hit Alt Shift G, it will put the caret on all the lines that you selected. So it's super helpful. Let's say if I go to my store and spec, and most of the time you're gonna have something like this that you can mark your function. Right? You can do this, and it will give you everything. So that's what I paste. Right? I select everything, give it a quote, and that's my mark function. So I use that all the time, so I don't remember the clone caret anymore. Control T is the refactor this, and then Control Alt R is to run to pull up the run window. It's helpful for when you run test. So in WebStorm, if you set up like your environment correctly, WebStorm will be able to run your test inside of the IDE, and then when you hover on the describe or on the or the test suite or test case, you can see that there's icon right here that help you run a debug, or you can do Control Alt R. It will pull up the run configuration, and you can run that right here. So I usually do R and then hit number 2. It will run that one. Just gonna stop that because it's gonna open up Karma. All right, so that authoring experience. How are we looking on time? Do we still have time to go to the next step?
We have like 30 seconds.
Let's see, what is it? Oh my goodness, I don't think we have time to go to debugger.
Yeah.
It's the same experience with the debugger with Angular before with the inlet template. It's just like step over your code. Yep. Diff tools. VCS, I know a lot of people know about this already, but I want to show this one. Compare with. Again, I don't know. Let's say I have a lorem. I can have lorem in here. HTML, lorem right here. All right, and then I have another lorem. I don't know if it's going to be the same. So let's say that you have this copy, right? You copy this on your clipboard. It's available on your clipboard. And then you want to compare something on your clipboard with something else that you selected. So let's say I want to compare those 2 strings, and this applies to objects, arrays, all that stuff. So let's say you console log something on the Chrome console, right? You want to copy it and compare. So you can just highlight this and do Command-Shift-A, find action, compare with clipboard. It will bring up that diff view. And imagine when you debug why my object doesn't work, you can see the difference between the 2 objects. So this is the diff view that you have, same as like the git diff. So I use this all the time to debug objects. So that the compare with, and then code with me, but we don't have time. Yeah, that's it. That's
all right. We have a bunch of comments of, for God's sakes, bring Chau back for another webinar. We got more of that than I've ever gotten in a webinar, and the Alt Shift G blew people's minds.
That's a new one. That's a new action. Yeah.
Yep. And lots of things that you just talked about. Well, code with me. That's a whole webinar right there.
Mm.
I love seeing people talk about test first development and using the debugger during testing and let the IDE make your development flow so much better than going over to a browser all the time. That's one that I would love to have you show about NX and the whole flow, a better development flow. That would be a good webinar.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and start the process of wrapping up. So let's head over to slides. All right. Now, Chau, I knew during webinar prep that this thing was going to be fantastic based on the comments that we've gotten. I think it's safe to say it was fantastic. But before we go, I believe Narwhal has something going on next week.
Yep. So we're going to have a 2-day workshop next week, and it's going to target the European time zone on the 7th and the 8th July next week. Please go to that link. I don't remember the time. And that's WebStorm is a discount code. Use that code to have $100 off. Thank you to my marketing person.
And we pasted that link into the chat so that if people don't get it in time for me to click the next slide, then they can get it over in chat. And if you're watching this on the recording, but before the workshop happens, you can get it over in chat as well. All right. Thanks. I recommend everyone to take a look at that workshop. Highly recommended. And really just go follow Chau, follow Narwhal on Twitter like I do. You gotta get up early so that your brain is ready to absorb all that good stuff. But thanks a lot, Chau, for the Angular power tips for WebStorm.
Thank you for having me.
If you'd like to get more information on WebStorm and to see the announcement of the future Chau webinar that he obviously just promised to rejoin us and do, go see our website at jetbrains.com/WebStorm. Just got a comment from RM. Chau, come back again. And another one, come back again. Follow us on WebStorm. Go to our website. If you haven't already, check out our blog where you'll see up-to-date news about events such as this, but also releases. You know, things are starting to get into the end of the EAP cycle. In addition to educational resources, we'd love your feedback on this webinar as long as it's good. So please feel free to contact us on Twitter or in the after webinar survey, which we will email in a bit. We actually read that, so share your thoughts with us. That's all from us today. Thank you so much, Chau, for even me. I wrote down a bunch of notes of things I got to follow up about. Thank you, everyone else, for joining us, and hope you have a nice day.